Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you're having a fine day today. I hope you're excited. I think I say that every week, but I certainly find myself just constantly excited by what we're doing here today. We'll get some of the sort of mechanical stuff out of the way. First of all, I changed the name of my character. Not the pronunciation, just the spelling, because I like the way that chat was spelling it better. And then, if y'all would like to jump in on character sheets and any of the other information, which I admit, there's not a lot of other information in there right now for Campaign 2, but you can use the bit.ly link for the Lore Keeper's Tome. That'll allow you to keep track of the character sheets. I've officially selected my my third asset, which is going to be Improviser. Just sort of like practical thinking on my feet. Now, for anyone who is wondering what today is all about, let me tell you. Side cannons! Welcome back to Side Cannons, folks. This is the tabletop RPG wing of Sidecar Stories, and today we are playing our second campaign. We played a year-long campaign called Resedius Arena, where we followed a trio of arena fighters in their day-to-day lives, just trying to make it in the big world of show business. Now, after an additional year of world-building in the realms of Resedius, we are back in the realms with our second campaign. I wanted to focus in a little bit more for this second one, and we find ourselves now in Campaign 2, Night School at Vesperale Academy. Now, what does all that mean? Well, we don't know yet, frankly. Many of you who have been following the Spout Lore streams, you will know what that's all about. But if you're just here for the episodes themselves, well, maybe you're not going to be quite sure yet. And maybe that's a fun way to go into it. I don't intend to spoil it today, necessarily. I may do some spoiler stuff after the session, but I'm going to try not to do any spoiler things before the session. Instead, I will simply offer all of you a tiny recap of the world. The realms of Resedius are a massive and unending frontier, and at the very center of it is the heart of civilization. As a matter of fact, it is the only city in all the realms of Resedius. Simply called the Towers, or Resedius Towers. The Towers are a massive, sprawling, magical metropolis at the center of everything. And it's said that no other city could stand. There are villages, there are little towns, even the occasional fort or castle. But no true cities exist outside of the one. Now, it is at the center of civilization and considered sort of the blazing bonfire of civilization. But there are embers spat out nearby, and one of those embers is the town of Dawngreet, where we find ourselves today. Dawngreet is the place where we had our last episode, and in this campaign, we are going to be focusing much more on a very specific place in this campaign. In the first campaign, we spent a lot of time just sort of city hopping. We would bound between districts, and it was a lot of fun, and I would continue to do that if we went back to the towers. But right now, we're in the shallow frontier. We're not deep out in the frontier. We're fairly close to civilization. There are other towns nearby. We're on a trade route. As a matter of fact, this is one of the sort of outgoing towns wherein expeditioneers will sort of land here for a night or two in preparation for heading out deeper into the frontier. But that's not why we're here. As a matter of fact, our characters, Elyria and Igor, come from slightly different places. Elyria, the character that I will be playing, is from a little deeper in the frontier, from the Oxbends up to the northeast of the towers, sort of off of our main map. Coming down south, looking for an adventure, having never seen the towers before, and frankly, still hasn't. Got caught up with a group called the Wild Stallions, kind of a frontier gang who does some work in the towers as well, but they have tasked Elyria with bringing a chest south. Elyria doesn't know what's in the chest, but is not excited about the prospect of betraying these people that they know to be pretty dangerous. Igor is also not necessarily from around here. Igor is from a different part of the frontier. As a matter of fact, right on the border between frontier and towers. Igor is from a gate town, one of the large sort of towns that crops up on the ground level, not consisting of towers, but butted right up against the towers. And this little gate town on the southern side of the towers is where Igor grew up and learned some of his stealthy ways. But Igor also got looped in with the Wild Stallions. And they brought him across through the towers and then left him in this little town here. For unknown reasons, but for a known purpose, which is to case the joint. The Wild Stallions want Igor to get a good handle on what the little town of Dawngreet is like, in anticipation that their gang is going to be expanding here. In Chapter 1, the two of us, you and I, Elyria and Igor, myself playing Elyria and Chat playing the character Igor, the two of us are in town, just trying to do what we can to make it. We've managed to accumulate a few supplies, but we're spotted by the people of the farm at which our little friend was helping us. The two of us being just between children and teens ourselves, we flee, of course, because what else can we do? We run down through the ruined neighborhood at the southern end of town. This gray ash spot at the southern corner. We managed to evade our pursuers and head up through the populated neighborhood on the west side of Dawngreet, up toward the forest. Now, if we were to continue west, we would find a pretty inhospitable territory. If we head east, we're heading deeper out into the frontier, but if we head west, it's a contested land that constantly sees violence, and the further we get that way, the more we hear about silly rumors involving old castles taken over by Duskin. Duskin, for those of us who live in this world, we would be familiar with as a blanket term for those people of the dusk, the vampires, the ghosts, the lycan, werewolves, werebears, wereboars, all sorts of lycan. Those are mostly rumors, I'm sure. We continue our escape, leaving our supplies in a rain barrel, intending to come back later and not drawing too much suspicion to ourselves. But then something else suspicious happens. A group of hooded hunters walks into town. What do they want? It's unclear at first, but as the town guard comes to meet them, a shape suddenly plummets out of the sky. Something large, something like a massive bat, almost. The hunters see it, the guards don't, and the hunters make ready to take aim and fire. And that is when Igor decides to get involved. Igor leaps out of his hiding place in the watchtower at the center of town, beginning a melee, and causing the hunter's shot to miss. They are carrying these rune-covered weapons, and we're unsure precisely what they do, but the guards and these hunters fight it out. The guards do manage to fight the hunters back off into the western woods, but they're not able to capture any of the hunters. The hunters make it away unscathed. The same cannot be said for Igor and Elyria. The two of us are hurting, very, very sore, but even though we know tonight's going to be a painful and hungry night, we know tomorrow we'll get some supplies. And we fall asleep in peace. And that's when, at the very end of our last episode, a chain etched with runes loops down underneath the wagon where we lay our heads and wraps around Igor's neck. I thank you all very much for joining me here today, and I hope you will enjoy this next chapter of Night School at Vesperale Academy. Elyria stumbles through Dawngreet in a haze. It's been a week or a day since they fell asleep in the only home they've known for months, Igor's company. Then, however long ago it may have been, they woke up. Igor's body lay cold, with a bruise around his neck. Since then, Elyria has just wandered. What else is there to do? They consider going home, back to the silent shores in the north. They even stray northward, a day on the road, before turning back for fear of being caught by the Wild Stallions before completing the quest they were given. They turn back, stumbling into Dawngreet, sick and dirty, starving, begging for help at the temple ruins. They get a little help from Shara. Shara is an elf, young, an acolyte at the Temple of the Broken Throne. The temple butts up against the ruins. Their red hair is shaved close to their head as they nod sympathetically. They're able to offer a bit before the old priest, Rustov, turns them away. Elyria takes the meager offerings, a little cabbage, some cheese, and eats what there is to be had, as Rustov calls Shara to their task for the day. They study these ruins on the northeastern corner of town. Rustov can often be seen scouring these ruins with a fine gaze, trying to discern the ancient painted markings that once covered it. He and Shara, as part of their discipline, go over these ruins and try to revive the images there. Elyria will get no lasting help here. They resort to stealing. Wandering around in the expeditioneers' camp, there's not much to be had that isn't being closely watched. Elyria manages to gather some small supplies, and then is run off. They can't even call it home anymore. Elyria doesn't run off quickly enough. They take a beating that is considered a warning, but the expeditioneers are tough. With their spoils, they head to old Vjomir's general store, next to the Whetstone blacksmith. At the southern edge of town, we can see a blacksmith with a pale roof, and then next to it, another large building. This is old Vjomir's shop. Vjomir is an old dwarf man who, at the moment that Elyria enters, says,
"Oh, I don't think so. I know why you're here. You're here to bring things out to hunters in the forest."
"No, I'm not. I've got a few horseshoes. I've got a bridle and some arrows. I would like to trade them for some food."
Some food. You're bringing it into the forest, listen to me, you come here. You ever hear the name Luka Bruska?
Luka Bruska? No, I don't, I have never heard of him.
We shall see. Put what you've got on the table.
Elyria hesitantly puts the supplies in front of the old dwarf.
All right. I can give you a loaf of bread for the bridle. All of the rest of this is going to equivocate. Maybe a few ounces of cheese. All right?
Elyria, with no energy to haggle, simply nods. Vyomir softens after seeing the state that Elyria is in. Vyomir says,
I'm sorry. I want to make sure that those people who attacked the town last night, they don't get any of my help, none of my supplies. Not a single thing, not a crumb.
No, of course not. I don't know anything about them. I wouldn't help them. And I couldn't, even if I wanted to.
Yes. They're a scourge. I've seen them before.
You have seen them?
Aye, I've seen them. Best not to discuss them.
Elyria takes the supplies and ducks out quickly before they are recognized by any of the townfolk. Going out into the alleyways behind the shops here in this more populated area to the western edge of the town of Dawngreet, Elyria eats the food as the sleet and rain that has been storming recently turns to snow. A light snow, and as Elyria makes their way to the edge of town, munching on as much food as they seem willing to part with for now, knowing it may be a long time before they have more. The snow starts to swirl and gather over in a spot in a little collection of trees. A sharp whistling fills the air. The air whirls around, and in this little collection of trees, the snow whirls tighter and tighter and tighter in this cyclone before dispersing, leaving a pair of cloaked figures. It's early, early morning here in Dawngreet. The sun has barely begun to peek over the horizon, and these two figures stride into town, not yet casting much of a shadow, and they enter the shop. Elyria is curious and heads in to find a pair of figures with tanned skin, and yet in between sort of shifts in the robes, they can see bright white tattoos all up and down the arms of these two individuals. One, an elf woman, maybe just peeking into middle age, and then a human man carrying we'll call it a cane, I suppose, and yet the head of this cane is massive and thick and wrapped in a studded iron band, clearly a weapon. It's hard for Elyria to pick up much of what's going on. We hear from inside old Vyomir ask,
Wait! Are you with Luca Brusca?
No, we are not. We are just here to visit the town, passing through.
All right, well, if you hear the name Luca Brusca, you turn the other direction. You give them no help.
All right.
The two of them talk for a moment, and after making great assurances to old Vyomir, they manage to convince him to purchase some supplies, and they get a bit of news about the town. Out in the street, as Elyria stumbles away, there are whispers. Other shopkeepers. The owner of the Whetstone Smithy leans into his apprentice and says,
You watch out there. Those markings along their arms. That's vampires, I'm sure of it.
Vyomir comes and watches as the two hooded figures proceed down the road, disappearing into the camp of expeditioneers to the north.
Well, I've never had any quarrel with them. You hear about them, certainly. You hear about all the terrible things that they do, and yet I have never had any trouble. We shall see.
The morning proceeds into day, a foggy one, and the snow begins to pick up. And still, Elyria gets no sleep. But they remember the food in the barrel. They stumble into the alleyway and eat hunched over the barrel. They manage to almost keep it all down. It's hard to show their face back in the camp after having stolen. And so with nowhere else to go, Elyria heads into the forest. Elyria walks to the north, deeper and deeper into the forest, past the glassblower shop with its quiet and secretive apprentices. Into the forest, Elyria walks alone, hoping that somewhere here, the underbrush, this mysterious figure that has been helping Elyria to survive on their trip south, hoping for some kind of aid. Elyria stumbles into the forest until, heading far enough, they come upon a hill off in the distance. It peeks through the fog, and up at its peak, the ruins of an old castle, skeletal against the sky.
What?
Where are you going?
Igor? Igor, where are you?
Igor, you're not sure where you are.
Where are you going? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for help. I don't know. The underbrush, I was hoping that they would come out, but Igor, please, come out. Where are you?
Igor, you try to imagine where you are. You know you're close to Elyria. You know there is forest around you, and yet looking forward, you can see the forest, and yet if you turn and look in your peripheral, you can see just fog, and that fog fades behind you into absolute darkness, in spite of the day becoming morning. Suddenly, a hand falls upon Elyria's shoulder. Igor, you manifest into the world. It's difficult. You feel like you are pulling yourself forward, out of the mist, out of nothingness. This hand falls onto Elyria's shoulder. They look down, and immediately the hand disappears.
Igor, please don't. Please.
Igor, you feel yourself being drawn away. You forget why you're here, and for a moment, you even forget who is this person. This human with their broad shoulders and short shorn hair, carrying nothing but burlap, a dirty face. But you fight forward. You're here suddenly. You come forward out of this fog and you separate yourself from it. And there you stand. Elyria gasps and falls into the light snow that covers the ground.
Igor, I saw you. You're dead. ghosts. I've heard terrible things. Please, I don't know. Have I wronged you? I should have protected you. I know this. I know it. I'm sorry, Igor. This is what we've always done. I protected you from harm, and you protected me from starving and getting myself into too much trouble. Igor, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Igor. No, you were good for me. I am dead, but I'm here for you, Elyria. My choices led me here. You chose to stay. I'm happy to see you.
And Elyria looks up into Igor's face, that elf boy with ashy blonde hair. That face that Elyria always imagined would stay young even as Elyria got much older. Igor wipes a tear off of Illyria's face, and Elyria feels this cold presence, a hand seemingly of the fog.
I've got that key. The one that you picked up that night. I also brought these.
And Elyria pulls around the alchemy supplies. Just a little satchel, a little leather bag with a few beakers, a little mortar and pestle. Just a couple of things that Igor would use to do a bit of light alchemy.
I brought them. I was hungry, but I knew I couldn't sell them. But we didn't have anything else to bring. I don't know where I'm going to go now, Igor. If I go, can you follow me? Do you hunt here? Do you hunt me?
Elyria sort of passes a hand through Igor's form, and then closes their eyes and just like,
It's very strange.
We will see.
All right.
It didn't appear that Igor's efforts to wipe away Illyria's tears produced much of an effect. It's just sort of smudged the tears across their dirty face, and they reach up and wipe underneath their eyes. But as they do, there's real relief there. For just a moment. Because in the moment after, a sound. The last sliver of the moon is just disappearing over the horizon as the day breaks.
What's that? Wolves? This far out of the frontier? No, that can't be right. All right, we should. I don't know if you can be hurt, but I know I certainly can. Let's head back into town.
Footsteps. The forest darkens. Footsteps fall in the snow.
Igor?
A massive form thunders out of the woods and pounds past Elyria through Igor, who disperses as fog and then comes back together.
I don't know which way we came. It's like I just woke back up in the mist.
All right, I'll try to lead us back.
But at this moment, this figure turns and pounds back through the trees, and an enormous wolf with eyes that burn a rusty red charges at Elyria and takes a massive bite out of their shoulder. This is the nightmare moment. This is the moment Elyria was worried about, fighting all on their own. As far as they know. Now, of course, Igor is here, but what can Igor do? Well, Igor's gonna have to try some things and find out. Igor doesn't know yet what Igor's abilities are. More of these shapes hurtle through the woods on either side. We find ourselves in a ravine, and the howling continues. But it doesn't just continue, it reverberates. The trees seem like they shake around us. Pine needles are falling and bits of bark are cracking in the cold. The snow continues to fall. As this massive shape once again tumbles out of the darkness, and then another one comes through. The morning is progressing, and yet the forest is getting darker, and as these howls in the near distance get louder, the darker it gets and the more the trees thrum and reverberate. Crackling bark drops, and this next shape comes out of the forest and grabs the satchel in which I'd been carrying the very last of my supplies, the ones I just got from Vyomir earlier today. The ghost of Igor whisks over through the woods. You find yourself traveling fairly quickly, but as you hurtle through the mist, you find yourself once again sort of forgetting why. But you remember, you're trying to help Elyria. You go ahead and you try to find a wolf to possess. This is a thing ghosts can do, right? You've heard the stories, the little nightmares about it. You find a wolf. It's large, maybe the leader, who knows. You dive at it and yet pass right through. Elyria waits for the next shape to come pounding out of the darkness. I am terrified. Elyria is shaking, and yet from the ground picks up a big tree branch and tries to use it just to stave off these clearly wolves. The howling continues, but as one of these pounds by, Elyria backs up against a tree and braces the branch against the tree as the wolf pounds through and manages to catch itself in the shoulder with this branch braced against the tree. As this wolf squeals and pounds back into the darkness.
In the satchel, I've made an elixir that you can drink.
What?
Elyria just sort of falls back against the tree, fumbling with the clasp as these footsteps pound through the snow once more, and grabs with a shaking hand a dirty vial, but just tips it up into their mouth. And although exhausted, Illyria's eyes just sort of like open a little wider, can see a little bit more keenly, and not only that, but moves a little bit more quickly. Elyria still has initiative and is going to try and get away here. The wolves, for a moment, let up. I know they are watching from the darkness, we both do, as we sort of stand back to back with my back chilling from your ghastly form right behind me. I try to grab another tree branch. There's not much here. I grab a big rock, maybe the size of a large bread roll, and just sort of stand at the ready as much as I can. But this howling, it's piercing, rising to an absolute fever pitch. The trees start to visibly thrum. We can see them vibrating. And one by one, burst into flames. It happens slowly. First one, and then another, and then another, until there are a half dozen trees around us, just shattering into sudden flame as though struck by lightning. This howling gets louder, and we can hear that it is twisting around itself, unearthly harmonies and melodies being sung in a non-human voice. These wolves are singing something into the air, a powerful magic with all of them in chorus. And the forest lights up with fire from these exploding trees. The forest exploding around both of us. Suddenly, the heat washes over us. Deathrave says, can we try to disperse our physical appearance into the fog we've formed as a kind of shroud the area around Elyria? That's super cool. Yes, absolutely. Elyria is horrified for a moment as Igor simply explodes into mist. Elyria screams, Igor! But the voice of Igor remains, and this mist thickens and darkens around Elyria. Elyria can still see kind of okay, but it blocks out the some of the fire that is trying to encroach. Just a little bit of that heat, it dampens it, and it makes a very opaque visual barrier to all of these wolves thundering around through the forest.
Use the mist, Elyria.
Okay, all right. I got to run. I can't hold them all off.
I'm still with you.
And this absolutely bolsters Elyria. Elyria settles their breathing and goes into a bit of a mode that I think Igor kind of knows. Whether I don't know if they've talked about it much, but Elyria has a solid sense of focus, and Elyria is going to dig their feet into the soil, strap their gear on more tightly in preparation to run. Elyria falters. Making little starts, they sort of try to rush off to the north and then to the east, but every time as they sort of pass into the mist a little bit, another tree bursts into flames and Elyria is knocked back.
I think I'm going to have to fight.
I sneak over to the edge of the mist and listen for the next footprints to come thundering past, and doing so, I strike out at one of them and hear a as I hit another one with this massive rock. It's at close range, but I slam it into this creature's furry shoulder.
Igor, we might be able to do it. Thank you for your help.
I managed to hit another one in the shoulder as it goes past, and then this one I hear a crunch.
All right, Igor, I think if I wait, I can try to injure this one on the way past, and hopefully that will give me enough of an opening. If there are too many more, I'm not going to make it, but maybe if it's just this one. It's hurt, I can tell.
Elyria just sort of like peers into the mist, looking up and around, hoping that Igor is indeed still there.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right.
Igor clouding their senses. Okay, I love this. Okay, so fantastic. So in addition to this fog, suddenly this sort of like unearthly whisper scream starts to emit from the fog. A few yelps start to come out of the distant fog here as this scream, this whining keen reaches a fever pitch. And in addition to the fog, you are just releasing this unearthly, terrible noise as I try to rush out into the forest as these wolves yelp with this massive, like, whistling, whispering scream echoing in their ears. All right, if I can just take out this one wolf, I might have an opening where I can rush off into the forest. Come on. Ooh, these are good numbers. These are good numbers, folks. On a strong hit, the foe is no longer in the fight. And we hear a squeal as one of these wolves charges once again into the fog, and Elyria is ready, bringing this rock down hard on its snout. And in doing so, notices a dirty scarf or band of cloth wrapped around one of its paws. It crashes to the ground, and I think in a moment of curiosity, let's see if I take it with me here. Yeah, I think I grab for it, and I'm going to lose a bit of momentum for that, but I grab for it and take it with me. It is sort of a dirty, kind of yellowed banner, brown and yellow. It might have even started white, who can tell? But it has a U shape on it, and inside of that U shape are spikes pointing inward. One could read it as like a pit with spikes in it, sort of crudely drawn, or a crudely drawn sort of smile with fangs coming up from the lower jaw. It's hard to tell. But Elyria rushes into this hole created in the sort of the enemy's defenses here, and rushes off into the woods. Trees, as I pass, still burst out into flame as the howling continues, but it's getting quieter. We're getting away. Our footsteps hit the snow as Igor simply washes behind us. Your manifestation has saved us. Saved me, at the very least. They were able to get away with some supplies, and they are still certainly here in the forest, but we have started to make our way back to civilization. You've got a rusty red tinge, Igor, as you form back into yourself. Elyria is gasping for breath, panting with the effort of fighting and fleeing. And Igor, you can feel that you yourself are not unaffected by all this exertion. Maybe it's simply that you are not accustomed to having this sort of ethereal form. Perhaps you are wondering, like, does your physical body still get tired? It's hard to know right now, but you certainly don't feel great. You feel once again like you're sort of losing yourself into that void that seems to hover right behind you at all times. Looking forward, you can see the physical world, but it's almost as if you're looking at it from the mouth of a cave. And the further you fade, the more you step backward into the cave, and you can only see the material world in front of you at a distance. But for right now, you're still standing very close to the mouth of the cave. You can, not a literal cave, of course, but as you look into the world, it's only at the very farthest edges of your vision do you see that darkness, the consuming mist. You feel pretty present for the moment. The howling has not ceased out in the forest here, but the woods are much quieter here.
Igor, I don't know the way back. I've done a bit of hunting, but I don't know. I don't know. We never explored this far into the forest. We focused on the town.
There is the castle up on the hill. I saw it as I was reforming, as I returned. We can use that to navigate.
All right, but do we go toward the castle? Do we go back to town? I don't know where these wolves are going to be.
Elyria stops for a moment and examines the pennant, this armband that she sort of pulled off of this wolf. It appears to be sort of like a small flag, essentially. Like I said, a bit of a pennant, maybe created from what is essentially a rag, and just very crudely stitched into this fabric is, indeed, as I said, is the shape of a U, and inside that U are sort of spikes.
Igor, I don't know whether to go back to town or it's the only place that we know. It's the only place that we know. We could get some help there. I
don't know which way we need to go to get to town from the castle. Maybe we can get a view from there.
Okay. All right.
Igor is going to try and navigate us up toward the castle. As we proceed through the forest here, we can see some of the damage left by these howling mages, whoever they were.
I've never seen a wolf wear a scarf before. This was tied onto its paw. It wasn't just caught there. Then again, I've never heard howling wolves that could burst trees into flame.
Igor uses the form of mist. This just sort of casting away the need to walk, and scouts forward, disappearing into the trees in front. Elyria knows what the mission is and therefore doesn't get too worried, but still sort of pulls their insufficient clothing around them, trying to fend off the cold. Igor, you whisk forward, and up on the hill there you can see the ruins. Again, skeletal, ruinous castle, this old artifact of some ancient keep. It's barely there, but it might give us a vantage point. Now for this, we are both going to have to be very quiet. Igor comes back and reports,
maybe it was not the wolves that made the fire. We don't know.
It's true. It's true, but someone working with the wolves? Someone trying to fight the wolves? Was it the hunters? I don't know.
Igor simply fades. Visually, at least. In your own mind, Igor, you can see that you're still at the mouth of this cave. You have receded a bit as you continue to sort of exert yourself in the material world. It's difficult. It's difficult to stay. The more you sort of seem to take advantage of your ghastly nature, the more it tries to overcome you, the more it tries to become your default state. Shadow and fog and mist and near nothingness. But you managed to hold on so far. It does, however, keep you incredibly stealthy. You are invisible, you leave no footprints, and you progress and lead Elyria up toward the castle. Elyria isn't quite so quiet. Elyria isn't accustomed to moving quietly and stealthily. And Elyria can feel the energy being sapped. This is not the adventure that we signed up for. Elyria looks to Igor and says,
I knew I wanted to get away from my town for a little while, just get off of those silent shores. I knew that it would be dangerous, but I didn't know how hard it would be to lose someone. Igor, you were gone, and if I go, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know if I'll join you as a ghost, or why we would stay. I don't know. Do you think we did what we came here to do for the Wild Stallions? I suppose almost it doesn't matter now, does it?
we trek through the quiet woods together. We approach the base of a hill here, and as we start to climb it,
"That is a mystery that we will find out,"
says Igor. Elyria says,
"Aren't you getting tired? Maybe you just don't, climbing up this hill."
"We can't count on the idea of you becoming a ghost, too. For now, let's focus on your survival. The stallions, our goals, none of that matters right now."
I think it is very safe to say that the two of us have forged a bond together. Don't y'all think that's fair? I think after all of this, between sort of me defending you back in town, you defending me here as a ghost, I think it's very fair to say that the two of us have forged a bond here. Ooh, we beat it, and we beat it with a twist. Fascinating. What a great time for a twist here. The two of us trek through this forest here, and as we do so, a twist, potentially a new opportunity. There's a new sound in the forest here. Footsteps on the snow once again. Elyria whirls around. Igor,
what do you see?
The sun is a little brighter now, and Igor, you're having kind of a harder time maintaining your corporeal form against the sun. Certainly not something that's like sort of driving you away, but it's a little tougher, it seems, as the sun has come up and you are out of the shadows, to sort of maintain your natural form here. This padding in the woods, it doesn't sound like the rapid sort of thunderous footsteps of the wolves here. The castle, this ruin, is now just a bit above us. There's a steep trail to climb, however, and as we come upon this trail, we're hearing these footsteps. We start to back away from them toward another sound, which seems to be a rushing stream, or perhaps a small river in the same direction as this path. As we do so, here in the forest, we see a shape emerge. It's a tiger. A white and black striped tiger. Sort of that classic, the one that most people think of when they hear Siberian tiger. But this one has the black and white stripes rather than the orange ones. Elyria gets ready to fight once more, but this individual starts to snarl a bit, and sits and sort of keeps its distance from us, but snarls, and slowly the snarl changes. And slowly, this tiger shifts from its original sort of black and white tiger form and becomes shorter and stockier until it is mostly a dwarf. Mostly a dwarf. This dwarf sits on its sort of squatted on its hands and knees here before sitting back and saying,
Old Viomir. Viomir said you were in trouble. Let me look at your wounds.
Just absolutely in shock. The two of us backed up against this river with the trail on the other side just stretching upward, where we can see the castle spire up into the sky. And this dwarf steps forward with a shaking step. Elyria steps back and says,
Don't you come anywhere near me. You stay back there.
Listen, you're not going to feel well for a couple of days. The blood on your shoulder, I can see it. You have been wounded, yes?
And Elyria sort of looks down. Igor kind of wafts in front of Elyria and says,
Explain who you are and what you want.
The dwarf smiles. He's got like almost a platinum white beard. And he sort of grins for a second.
A ghost. Shouldn't you be in school?
In school? What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I am here because old Viomir sent me. Now, you have been wounded, but this is a very particular wound.
He takes another small step forward and holds his hands up.
I'm going to make you an offer. It is difficult here to be a lone wolf.
Takes another small step, and Elyria, sort of not quite knowing what to do, reaches down for a river rock and picks it up and sort of hefts it at this dwarf that continues to advance. Especially considering this dwarf, as he continues to raise his hands, we can see on the arm a dirty yellow scarf bearing a U with spikes inside of it. Elyria panics and throws first one rock and then another one. They miss in the panic, and Elyria steps back into the water as it starts to rush across, but then starts to feel pretty woozy.
The dwarf says, You're going to want to get out of the water. You're going to feel very dizzy, and then you're going to feel very sick, and you're going to stay very sick.
He looks up at the castle up above and says,
Listen, I don't know if I can help you, but I can offer you a different choice. It is hard to be a lone wolf, but it might be easier to be something different. I give you only a chance.
And reaching forward, as I said, this dwarf is only almost reverted to a dwarf, and as he reaches forward, Elyria sees off in the forest the underbrush, this shape that has followed Elyria and kept Elyria safe throughout times of absolute desolation. Elyria goes to raise another rock and strike at the dwarf, but seeing the underbrush over the dwarf's shoulder, it just shakes what must be a head. This dwarf extends a hand, and it's almost changed into a dwarf's hand, but at the ends of its fingers, still claws, long, vicious ones, and it reaches toward the wound and grips tightly around it. Elyria screams into the forest, and it's enough to make them fully pass out. Elyria drops into the stream, and the dwarf hauls them back up onto the riverbank.
What did you mean by school? What have you done?
The dwarf says,
Listen, you're going to get some help, all right? Help is going to come for you, and yet it might not be the sort of help that you want. Never let this child forget. There are other homes for the wild things in the world. You yourself could find a different way.
He looks up at the castle and back into the forest. Doesn't seem to see the underbrush. As a matter of fact, I don't know if Igor does either, but this shape turns and plots away back into the forest. As you lose it between the trees, Igor, it sort of changes from a, reasonably tall but stocky shape into a long black and white shape and disappears into the snowy forest, perfectly camouflaged. You look, you don't see the underbrush. That seems to be how the underbrush operates. But you stand now over Elyria's unconscious body, sort of one arm still dangling into the river. Igor, with Elyria unconscious on the ground, you try as you might. However, your form is not corporeal enough to get a hold here. Your ghost form is, however strong you were before, which is not terribly, you are even weaker now against the sort of the simple act of strength it would require to move Elyria. But reaching down toward Elyria, you find that you get a hold not so much on their physical form, but on something closer to their spirit. You reach into Elyria. It's strange, but your hands pass not even into sort of an approximation of their physical form, but the essence of them, which sort of spins around their body and along the things that they carry with them, that they consider important. It's not just the spirit of this person is not just in the body, and you reach in and find blood at war with itself. You hear the howling of the wolves in this essence. You hear the low rumble growl of that tiger here, and you hear shouts, terrified screams of Elyria, as they are simply caught up in this fight, even more so than the fight between the hunters and the guards. This is a clash between two enormous legacies. This is the first time I think that Igor has ever really been deeply aware of the grand fable, this thing that underlies the realms of Residus. You get just the smallest peek at it, and you see why the Duskin are something else. You see, this blood is at war with itself, but much more so, it is a legacy on one side, the howling of wolves and the enormous weight of obligation to a pack and lineage. On another side, you see enormous traditions of solitude and solace. You see ancient lines of hunger and instinct, and both the viciousness of the hunter and the fear of prey. And those things slowly swell, and those legacies, whatever it was that Illyria's legacy might have been, it is now being crashed over and buried in this avalanche of legacy. As Igor bends over Elyria and tries to reach into this small piece of Elyria that they're able to still contact underneath the crashing waves of howling and growling and fear and hunger and deep instinct. The small part of Elyria that's still there, Igor reaches into it. This quiet scream somewhere at the bottom of this crashing stills. It stills down to a groan, but a groan that doesn't feel that same fear. It's overwhelmed, certainly, but you don't hear the terror in that scream anymore. And Igor emerges out from Elyria, and Illyria's face releases some of the contortion, and Igor sits quietly by Illyria's unconscious body. It's very quiet here. The stream rushes by, not frozen over yet, as the snow is still light on the ground. Illyria's breathing has slowed to a much more normal pace, but they're still unconscious. You find yourself having a hard time staying here in the world. You feel yourself, without noticing it, you can feel yourself further back into that cave of nothingness. You forget for a moment who you are, why you're here, who is this person. You start to emerge from yourself and spread out as a fog, and your consciousness sinks further back into this cave before coming to your senses again. You don't know quite how long it's been, but the snow is deeper than it was before. And the sun, instead of coming up, is now seemingly on its way down. You once again manifest yourself into the world. You're able to bring yourself sort of halfway back. But it's still tough to stay here, to stay connected. You try to move Elyria, but continues to just be a dead weight on the ground. And Igor looks up to the ruins, where this mysterious dwarf said there would be help available. You walk up this steep path. It climbs, you pass over this river, but it climbs up onto this hill. And here, at the hill, you find yourself in another small, quiet forest. It looks down over the sort of valley here, wherein you can see the town of Dawngreet and the lights. But as the sun continues to set here on this very foggy, snowy day, you sort of waft between trees and see a light. Not up in the castle, but here in this little forest. You hear footsteps, you hear the clinking of glasses, you hear murmuring voices, even a bit of laughter. You're alone here, approaching a cabin. You see this sort of rough-hewn log cabin, and Igor, you look in through the window. And inside, you see a group just sort of carousing together. You see a very well-built orc woman. She strong of arm and of leg. Currently, she is actually sitting at one of these rough-hewn stools and using a massive log with sort of a handhold cut into it, just to sort of do some reps, doing some strength training here. You see a young halfling woman who is sort of sitting quietly. Has a bandolier of daggers across her chest. You see an old man with black skin, with a very curious scabbard by his side for a sword, and you see an elf with sort of more tan skin, and a rapier. A long, very thin sword, sort of a fencing type sword. You see the four of them here, along with a couple of others sort of shifting around in the building. They're kind of a little outside of your view, but the four that you can see here, you can see two things. First, these individuals carry weapons that are marked with runes. And yet these runes don't glow like the ones that you saw the hunters from town use. In addition, you don't see any of the distinctive cloaks that they were wearing, nor the most distinctive feature of those hunters that came into town, the Lucabruska, as you've heard as Elyria heard old Viomir call them. These Lucabruska, the Lucabruska hunters had these tricorn hats, these tricorner hats. They're ones that like y'all might associate with pirates, I suppose. Those are sort of the hats that you associated with them, but you don't see any of those here. So these are something else. And yet, as you make your way around to different windows here, trying to get a good view inside, no one else turns to look at you, except this older man. He's very quiet here in the room, and he turns toward you, and without opening his mouth to speak, you hear his voice.
Hello there. Shouldn't you be inside?
He stands and walks over to stand at the window that you are standing in front of. He doesn't say anything. He just looks out. The sort of the carousing continues inside, and he just stands there at the window looking at you. Even though his mouth doesn't move, you hear him say,
"I don't recognize you." Might have a new one tonight then, eh? Inside?
He sort of like lazily jerks his head over his shoulder, and you know, like you can see he's indicating toward the castle.
Aye. Inside.
Everyone, thank you very, very much for joining me today. My name is Sam, and this is Sidecar Stories. If you're wondering what this is all about, this is our second campaign in the Realms of Recitus. The first campaign is slowly becoming more and more available on YouTube, and I'm working on getting it up on Spotify as well. It's just a lot of rendering to do, some stuff that needs editing, so and then tons of video uploading, which always takes forever. So I'm working on that right now, but I am going to be having these episodes up weekly. This is something where you're going to be able to find these 24 hours before the next episode goes live. So you're going to be able to find these. Of course, they'll be here on Twitch. And in this case, the Nightmare version, which if you're listening to this on YouTube or Spotify, I have edited this down into a non-Nightmare version. Y'all, this has been lovely. I'm going to have to do some work on the next one, but we have officially reached the school. And now we are, we're going to be getting into sort of the meat of this campaign. Those of you who are unaware of what we're doing here, this has been sort of the plan the entire time. I needed a couple of episodes to set some things up. I know this is I know this is sort of an atypical kind of campaign thing, and I know I have done some bending here. I know that I have done a little bit more kind of railroading, I guess I would say, but I needed to get us to the school. So that is not my intent for the rest of the campaign. For any of you curious GMs out there who are, or just storytellers in general who are like, this is kind of progressing along too much of a track for me. I knew we needed to get to the school within 2 episodes, and so that is where we're at. And now we can sort of let the story develop a lot more organically. Deathrave says, what is the popping noise supposed to mean? That is an edit point for me. Deathrave. That's how I know I have just said something incorrectly, and so I'm going to go back and edit that. So yeah, Deathrave, that's for me later on. And frankly, it's also for y'all, so that when you hear it, okay, hold on, that thing he just said might not be totally accurate. If y'all are going to be sticking around for a moment here, though, I am available to answer any questions that you may have, whether that's about lore. This is a time when we might get into some spoilers. I will try to do my best to sort of give my spoiler signal here. I'll hold my fist up, and once it's down again, then you will know that it's safe to come back in. But we're sort of like, we're getting near the end of spoiler territory, The progress of this campaign, I knew we needed to spend at least 1 episode, if not 2, somewhere between 2 and 3 episodes. That was my intent here, to get us to the castle, because I wanted us to set down, not roots necessarily in Dawngreet, but to have some idea of what we were doing there, and a good sense of kind of how well we had progressed on our plans. back in Dawngreet. And then now that we're here at the castle, now it's going to become a lot more about exploring this place and exploring the people who are here. I've got an interesting little array of characters already put together, and I'm sure we're going to be discovering even more of them. But yeah, folks, I'm really excited. As of the next episode, I'm going to have my lycan assets. You have already had a chance to explore your new ghost asset. You're a little ghost person. You're a little ghost lad. How are you enjoying it so far? I do need to make some adjustments here because I just realized there's no penalty for a miss, and that's just the way that this game works. Is there's always some sort of like there's always some drawback to a miss. It's one of the core ways that this system moves things forward. But Hen, it went pretty well today. We had a character become a ghost last session, and this session my character became a lycan. We shall see which sort. As a matter of fact, do we want to? Do y'all want to hear some spoilers? Do we want to roll for some spoilers here? Let's find out. Let's find out which of the two is going to win. I am going to roll 2d10 here on a 50-50. You missed kind of almost 2, Hen. Yeah. But don't worry, I'm sure there will be more. We're going to roll right now. I'm going to say on a 1 through 50. On a 1 through 50, the sort of lycan spirit that is going to dominate is going to be the wolf. On a 51 through 100, the lycan spirit that dominates will be this white Siberian tiger. Okay, so here we go. We're about to find out what sort of lycan Elyria is going to become. Now this is going to be a little spoilery here, so I'm going to keep my fist up here while we find out. Okay, it would appear with a 21 that I am going classic werewolf. There we go. Deathrave says, so I was a little distracted during the moments with the tiger, dwarf, and Elyria. I couldn't tell if after she was battling internally with lycan and tiger blood fighting to take over her with her watching essentially, or with her and the lycan blood alone, if that makes sense. Basically, all three of them were sort of in conflict. It was a lot like the fight back in town between the guards and the Lucabruska hunters. The town guard versus Lucabruska hunters. Both of them are much more powerful than Elyria, but Elyria was just sort of like caught in the middle of it. And so, yeah, I would say both of these sort of bloodlines were kind of raging over top and around Elyria, and they were unable to sort of like really defend themselves. But that's kind of the situation there. Yeah, exactly, Han. There are 2 wolves inside you. In this case, 1 wolf and 1 white Siberian tiger. So that is where we're at right now, folks. This episode is going to take a lot of editing. There's a lot of editing got to go on with this episode. Meanwhile, let's take a look at some of our quests, some of our vows, because that is the way to sort of earn XP in this game. I want to take a look at some of these vows. So, is Elyria ready to return to Brackwater, ready to settle down? Absolutely not. But I think it's possible that, with this big first fight, I think it's sensible to take like to make some progress toward this thing. It seems like I have made this vow to return, and I made it back before I left. So I've made some progress toward it, but I don't know if this is one that Elyria will eventually want to complete. We shall have to see, because I can choose whether or not to take the move. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. Fulfill your vow. When you achieve what you believe to be the fulfillment of your vow, roll against the challenge dice. Okay, yep. Or roll the challenge dice against your tracker. Elyria is indeed experiencing internal conflict, and will continue to do so into the next episode. Y'all just got a bit of a spoiler there for what's going to show up probably like midway through next episode. We'll see. But yeah, any additional questions that y'all have about the world here? Of course, we did, quite a bit of world building, and then we played a year-long campaign, and then we spent another full year just doing lore. And within all of that, we have developed out quite a bit of information for the realms of Residus. If you would like to know more about that, you can use the Residus command. That will bring up the link to the fandom. And then, of course, bit.ly/Lorekeeper's Tome will bring up some of the like Google Drive information. I'm trying to consolidate as much information as possible into one place, but you know, some of these links are still useful in other ways. Castle Vesperale is located. I can actually show you, Hen. You want to see exactly where it's at, Hen? Let's go on a quick adventure here, because some of y'all may not be aware of this. So we're gonna jump into Incarnate, which is the sort of map building spot. Yeah, this is why we've got the map. Let's see. Oh, good grief. I can never remember how exactly I did this. Okay. Did I use... I hope I used the right screen for that. I did. We're good. Okay. So this is currently our largest existing world map. Let me jump over to the screen. This is currently the largest world map that we have. Intentionally, a lot of the frontier has been left pretty blank. Y'all know this if you've been here for any of our world building streams. Once this map loads in here, you'll be able to see the Residus Towers. All of that gray space there in the middle of the green, this enormous sprawl of gray here for any of our newbies. This is the city of Residus Towers. As you can see, it's absolutely massive. I try to describe it as the sprawl of Shanghai with the height of New York and higher. Or maybe I should start using Dubai and higher, because that's sort of like the imagination that I have for it. Enormously tall towers to the point where you could live your whole life and never see the ground. You could live a whole life and never see and never climb to the top of a tower. And you could live an entire life never leaving the towers. Because it's just so massive. So let's zoom in a little bit here. I'm actually not going to take you straight to where we're at, because I want to go there I want to go there by the route that Igor took. So Igor, of course, as y'all know, is the character played by Chat. So if y'all would like to know where Igor is from, it might even be good. Like if y'all want to give me a name for this gate town, do let me know, because this is where Igor is from. Igor is from right down here. Near Crag Carrick. This is where Igor got looped in with the Wild Stallions, because they operate right down here near Crag Carrick. You know, with Boggs the Mountains crew, sort of that was the way that Igor got in with them. Igor has probably visited the town of Perseverance. This is the town that one of our PCs from last campaign sort of founded here. But this is the gate town, and Igor went through Crag Carrick on sort of a running mission, and as I mentioned, not necessarily fully accepted by the Wild Stallions. They made their way through the city, probably taking the Ponte de Catalina bridge, past the Bakers Guild, through many districts. I kind of like to imagine that each one of these little squares here kind of is a district. Some of these larger tokens indicate like a known district that we, you know, have lore about. You know, they kind of represent like points of importance, points of interest. They very well may have traveled through Cheap's Gate on their way out of town. But then there are these two gate towns of Paura and Fabra. Paura is probably where they left Residus Towers and traveled out into the world. Now, some of these landmarks are unknown to most, but traveling through dangerous territory here. These roads are left as much alone as they can be. But this is where we find ourselves now. Elyria is a town that we probably pass through to reach Dawngreet. And Dawngreet is right here at the tip of the forest here, encompassing some of the lycan territories. But as we can see, this sort of delta swampland area, this archipelago in the massive river from the north, this is roughly where we find ourselves. So if you're wondering where some of the roads go, here is the town of Dawngreet. If you are wondering what these roads are, basically, if you go north on this road, you head up along this forest. So you head up along this forest here. Oh, hello. Man, the navigation on this program is a little wonky, but otherwise, Sandra, I also have been very, very happy with it. So Dawngreet, north, south, east, and west roads. So north, you can see it goes up into lycan territory. South goes down and eventually will head to the gate town of Fabra. The western road has kind of been lost to time. This area, people attempted to settle it and it didn't go very well. And then the eastern road heads here out into the frontier with a stop first in Elyria. But that is where we're at, and then we can, head back to this zoomed-in map for anyone who hasn't seen it. This is the town of Dawngreet, and so once again, we can see north up into territory to the north, east over here to Elyria, south down here, and we'll eventually curve over to the west toward the gate town of Fabra. And then this western road here sort of like peters out, and I should probably actually sort of reflect that it's sort of a derelict road. Hen says, whenever I think of Reseda, I just think of one of those open sky boutiques, but very tall. Open sky boutique, I've never heard that phrase before. What does that mean? What is that? Can I get like a point of reference for that? I've never heard of that before. But yeah, that is where we're at. So we can zoom out here, and here we have the core, the heart of the realms of Reseda. And for anyone who is sort of new to some of the larger lore that we've talked about, we are right here on the sort of border between lycan territories to the north and vampire territories to the south. And then, of course, this western bank here is largely populated by ghosts. But of course, there is a mix in all three. But if you're going to find a full estate of lycan or a full estate of vampires, you can sort of guess at which territory they're going to be able to live most openly. And based on that, sort of whether or not they're involved with one of the major houses or factions nearby. If you're a vampire deep in ghost territory, you're much more likely to be sort of flying solo. It's like a mall, but without a ceiling. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, we kind of call those like pedestrian malls here, I guess. Something like that, sort of. But we definitely have them here. I got you, Hen. Thanks for the clarification. I appreciate it. But yeah, here is this is sort of the map of the area just surrounding the towers themselves, and of course north, south, east, and west, all sorts of different biomes, different frontier areas to explore, and we are focusing in right now on this little section of the world here, and we're going to really dive deep. I want to spend a lot of time talking in this campaign about spoilers coming up here for themes. If you don't want to hear about that, we're going to spend a lot of time in this campaign talking about the conflicts between the different groups of Duskin. That includes, of course, the lycans and the vampires. It's probably going to be mostly between them. The ghosts don't get as much into the sort of political conflicts anyway. But lycan and Duskin, lycan and vampire, they certainly will butt heads, and we are right there on the border between those. We're going to get into some themes about sort of, I guess, kind of Duskin self-protection, trauma and trauma response. We're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff here, but really get a chance to kind of dig in and explore how the grander things that we've talked about in our lore building affect very specific places. And I'm super excited about that. Super excited. Any other questions about the world? Any other questions, comments, concerns, curiosities? Let me head into the general RPG chat. Let's see. I gotcha. Yeah, that one's, frankly, Hen, that one is nicer than most of the ones I've seen. Hen, what is your question? And I know it's about chicken people already, so you can just tell me sort of what it is about chicken people your question regards. If you wish. How's it going overall? Are you talking campaign-wise or just generally? I would say campaign-wise, I'm super excited. The episode 2 was... Episode 2 was a little on the weaker side, I think, just compared to episode 1. I thought we had a fantastic episode 1, so I'm going to try and edit this one down to a a nice episode 2, and then episode 3 is going to be easier. Basically, this was the most shoehorned episode that we were going to have because I needed to get us to the school, and so after this, it's going to be much smoother sailing. I had a couple of like important points that I had to do. It was necessary. I had to get Elyria in some danger here, and I had to get us to the school. Those were necessary. From here on out, this story gets a lot more organic, which is how I operate best without sort of like really, really tight constraints. But Hen is wondering sort of in general, it's a good question, Hen. I appreciate it. I'm doing pretty well. I have got some, I caught up on my antidepressants, which was very much a good move for me. I probably should have done it much sooner, but better late than never. I am really thankful because California has some pretty solid public health care, unlike the states that I have experienced in the past. And so, yeah, I'm really thankful for that. I'm feeling much, much healthier, so much healthier than I have for like the last 2 years or so. The pandemic has been really tough for me because I'm very social, and so not being able to engage in that in the same way has been really hard. But I've been on these antidepressants for a couple of months now, and just they're working like a charm. So, yeah, Hen overall pretty good, pretty good. Sandra says, "Try a country that's not the U.S. Healthcare is great here." Yeah, healthcare in the U.S. has just become kind of a pretty capitalist hellscape of insurance providers charging more as doctors charge more, but then the doctors can charge more because the insurance covers it, right? So what's the big deal? Well, all of this money that the insurance providers and healthcare providers are sort of throwing back and forth, it all comes from somewhere, and it's just sort of we don't have necessarily people immediately paying these massive amounts of money, but over time that is what it has become, is that healthcare just kept charging more and more because insurance was covering it, and so insurance covered less and less and less, and now those prices stay high, but the insurance providers aren't participating as they should have been. So I'm really thankful for public healthcare. Super thankful. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have started a second campaign here. I would still be spending a lot of time just, real messed up. I'll tell you all that much. Let me see. We got some lore questions here. Deathrave says, so as of right now, Igor has no idea what killed him, right? Does Elyria? And the answer is no, neither of them do. But it's the sort of thing that we're going to be able to investigate, because I believe we've already got it on there. Yep. Oh, wait, hold on. I think we've already got it on here somewhere. One of your vows is to avenge his own death, and so that is absolutely going to become part of that. You're gonna Igor is gonna have some opportunities to, like, as you reach some milestones there, as you hunt around for clues in that regard, you're gonna be able to find out more about that. We also, even I, Sam, have not decided what it is that Igor is actually haunting, right? Because the haunting is tied to something that is integral to the sort of what did we call it? The ambiguous legacy. Some of the sort of deeper lore stuff here, and I'll once again hold up a hand for, I guess this is spoilers, even though it's really sort of just spoilers about deeper lore of the world that most characters in this world don't understand. It's just a truth that we know, but just as the audience. The Grand Fable sort of is the underlying force underneath everything, and it sort of a ghost exists because their legacy is uncertain, and so yeah, we will have to find out what part of your legacy is so uncertain that it would cause you to become a ghost. Hen says, don't worry, Sam. I started my murder mystery campaign having the PCs break into the yacht where it happens, get caught, bend the bars of the prison, nearly get shot, sneak into the office of the captain, then finally get shown their case in return for being returned off the boat alive. I see. I got you. That sounds high octane. I'm really looking forward to running more, more like. I kind of like running action. It's not something I thought that I would enjoy as much as I do, but I like it quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to getting back into that. This one, like, it had a decent bit of it, but I also like it to sort of mean something significant. I like to be able to drop clues, but also provide answers to mysteries. But, early episodes are always tough. It's much more about asking questions than it is about giving answers. And so I try to restrain myself and don't give too many answers, provide more questions, and then eventually we'll start to get around to answering things. Deathrave says, what do you mean by legacy exactly? Can you give an example of a ghost who knows exactly why they are one, but not necessarily Igor? So, for instance, Deathrave, if someone's legacy, if the sort of aggregate belief in the world about a specific person is that they are a conqueror of some sort, then they will their legacy goes down in the grand fable, written by a hand even more powerful than the Grey God. Basically, it's almost that the grand fable sort of writes itself. It's not like there's a god in charge of this. It is deeper and more fundamental than gods. The grand fable will take down the sort of legacy of that individual as a conqueror, right? People believe that they're a conqueror, so that is their legacy. But perhaps one side sees this individual as a conqueror, and then there's another large group who sees them as a coward. Then their legacy is kind of contested. It's unsure what precisely their legacy is. Maybe they were meant to do something important and they didn't quite accomplish it. Maybe that is part of their legacy, that there is sort of an understanding, there's a belief out there in the world that they were supposed to do something important, but they never managed it. Things like that. So basically, whatever their legacy is, if let's see, if like Alexander the Great, for instance, has at this point a fairly established legacy. So in our world, Alexander the Great probably wouldn't be a ghost because we sort of understand what there is to know about them. Your average person on the street probably doesn't have a very disputed legacy. They've got a few people who know them pretty well, and those people are going to generally agree on what they know about the person. But let's see. Let's say, for instance, we've got like. Well, let's use the real world again. If there was somebody who maybe did a ton for the community, but was also sort of like funneling a lot of money into organized crime, then a bunch of people know them as an organized criminal, and then a bunch of people know them as a real community member. That legacy is pretty disputed, so that person might well come back might well come back as a ghost. Or I should say stick around as a ghost. Hen says, I still remember that awesome battle where we had flying islands and the bees won, but that's for a different reason. Yeah, yes, indeed. Yeah, some great battles we had over there. And I think we're going to get into those more and more here as well. It's been really light on that so far because we're a couple of kids. We're starting to understand this, but we haven't had any training. I'm not carrying the weapon that I'm used to. Like I typically fight with a spear, and I don't have a spear right now. So I think we're gonna get back into some more organized action, but right now it's just sort of like loosey goosey, difficult to parse sometimes. Deathrave says, "Man, I have no idea what Igor's could be. Then I'll let you guys figure it out and ride with it." Sounds good, Deathrave. All right, gang, thank you so much for sticking with me through. I'm going to be honest, that was a pretty hairy episode. That one was a little rough. I thought it started out okay, but I think I need to do. It has been very informative. I'll say that much. Very informative as to the sort of like the prep that needs to be in place before I begin. I've learned a ton about prep over time, and I will continue to learn about it as I prep for different systems. This one, the sort of like the balance of things is really different. The way in which partial successes and full successes kind of manifest here, it's not nearly as flexible as something like Dungeon World. Dungeon World is super like, basically something good happens, something bad happens, or something complicated happens somewhere in the middle. And that has been sort of a territory that I've kind of thrived in, is like setting my own penalties for things, my own consequences. That is one of the foundations for the game that I'm writing called Silver Bullet. If you want to find out more about Silver Bullet, I am posting my progress over on Patreon, and I've actually got another file that I'm going to be uploading there today. So if you want to know more about that, head over to Patreon, just patreon.com/sidecarstories. But yeah, I think this overall has been a good half and half start. But yeah, I'm learning the system of Ironsworn. I'm getting to know it much better. And yeah, basically the big thing that I'm finding is that when I need to, when I'm trying to sort of like move the story forward in interesting ways, sometimes I run up against something where it's like, yeah, you got a weak hit, but that means something very specific. And that specific thing does not include like advancing the story forward necessarily. With a few of these specific moves. So I'm just getting used to which ones work in which ways. I'm going to get much better at it, sort of figure out ways in which my style matches this system. And if we need to bend the system a little bit, I'm going to do that because that is how I tend to operate anyway. I think for all of you who are interested in playing games, do some work to try and understand the game as it's supposed to be played. Don't start from a position of deciding to play it poorly, but you don't have to start by playing a system perfectly. You can go in and play it kind of wonky and then learn it over time. And then the second bit of advice I like to give is you never have to play the system perfectly. As long as you understand how it works, you can go in and make some tweaks to make the game that is most fun for your table. And for us, I'm learning about how that works right now. Hen says I would have joined today, but I've got a physics test tomorrow. Took 5 pages of the most condensed note possible. Ooh, boy. Hen, I wish you some good luck. Absolutely. Sandra says, for the positive or worst, interesting and enjoyable it will be. For the positive or worst, interesting and enjoyable it will be. Ooh, you threw me for a loop with some sort of some borderline Yoda syntax there. Let's see what's going on over here. Gems says, hi everyone. Hello, Gems. How do you do? It's good to have you here. Folks, I thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you're having an excellent one. Let me know if you have got any other questions here about what we've done. We've got 2 vows for Igor. One to case the Crossroads town before the Wild Stallions return, and one that I imagine Igor is going to be sort of developing over time, but we know it's sort of an underlying part of the character, to avenge his own death. Meanwhile, Elyria has got some sort of some vows as well. Return to Brackwater, ready to settle down. I think. Did we? I can't remember what happened with this. I want to say we were supposed to mark some progress in this, but that's okay. The Wild Stallions want me to bring something into town for them. It's a locked chest, and that's actually still back in town. I didn't bring that with me necessarily. I probably would have hidden it because it would have been too heavy to just sort of like carry around. But then I've got a vow to discover the truth of the Underbrush. The Underbrush being this mysterious character who has been following Elyria through their journeys. And that's where we find ourselves. Everyone, thank you so much for hanging out today. I hope you have an excellent week. I will see you tomorrow for the Hunger Games at 4 p.m. Pacific time, or I will see you next week on Wednesday. Excuse me. No, next week is going to be a big shakeup. So just y'all be ye forewarned. It is on Wednesdays in general, but be ye forewarned. Big shakeup next week. Have a great one, Hen. I will see you later. It was. I mean, it's smaller than an average chest sander, but like even a chest about this big is like it's you'd be lugging it around. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll probably just make a luck check to figure out whether or not I brought it with me, or if I hit it. Death Raves, thank you so much for joining me. Sander, have a good one. Hen, have a good one. Gems, I'll see you later. Everybody, I hope you have a fantastic day. My name once again is Sam. This is Sidecar Stories. Tuesdays, we're going to be coming back once my schedule sort of frees up. I've got a few RPG things I want to do before I fully commit to Tuesdays again. Wednesdays, we have got Side Cannons, the tabletop RPG wing of Sidecar Stories. That is what we're doing here, and you can find this here noon Pacific time on Wednesdays. And then, of course, Thursdays are Flying Sidecar, a voice actor's venture through some stories that we all love. Reading the Hunger Games right now, 4 p.m. Pacific time on Thursdays. Everyone, I love y'all. I will see you later. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye-bye.